So I'm coming to you all live from my kitchen. It's actually not live, it's recorded. But I wanted to do this lecture about family and work and the meaning of work. And there's no better place than in this kitchen. You see my very messy refrigerator, the microwave. On this side, we got the brooms. I have a tiny kitchen. It's actually kind of ridiculous. And dishes, dirty dishes at that. All to help demonstrate the point that I want to make, which is the point that we often forget certain types of work. So this lecture covers 7 major types of work in family. And we're also going to go over a couple of concepts that sociologists have come up with to describe these different types of work. So let's go back a little further. I want you to think about the meaning of work. If you ask someone, do you work? Often what we mean by that is, do you have a job in the paid labor force, right? And so one of the interesting things that feminist researchers did was they tried to get out of that framework and think about work more broadly. Because a lot of feminists felt that the work that many women were doing was often overlooked or ignored. And so the term that we're going to use for that work is invisible labor or unpaid labor. You might see that terminology. So let's go through the 7 types of labor. The first one is paid labor. So I'm being paid to be at home right now and do my job from home because of the global pandemic that we are in. So my job as a college professor is my paid labor job. That is one type of labor that people and families do. If you're a truck driver, that's your paid labor job. If you're a doctor, if you are a cashier, those are all examples of paid labor. And everybody pretty much agrees that that's work, right? Another type of paid labor is housework. So when I wash these very dirty dishes, oh, these are bad, in front of me, then at that moment, I would be doing housework, which is a form of unpaid or invisible labor. Vacuuming, sweeping, cleaning out this fridge, which is just a disaster, or that microwave, cooking, whatever it takes to maintain a orderly, clean house, that would be part of housework. The next type of unpaid labor is going to be emotional labor. Emotional labor is the job of keeping your family emotionally well. So when little Timmy falls down on the playground, who hugs him? Who kisses him? Who makes sure that, his little tears get wiped away? Who comforts their spouse after they have a long day at work? That job of making sure the family's emotionally connected and emotionally well, that is emotional labor. And that is another form of unpaid labor. And if we think about housework, if we think about emotion work, what we also know is that that work is disproportionately done by women. And that's very important to understand. Traditionally, paid labor was disproportionately done by men. Now we see both men and women in most households engaging in paid labor, but what we're not seeing is as many men involved in the unpaid labor. So we already covered emotion work, we already covered housework. Let's talk about consumption work. Consumption work is the work of buying the things that are needed for the house. So I have 85 boxes of cereal because I don't cook breakfast for my children. Whoever keeps track of whether or not those cereals are empty and whether or not we need to buy more cereal, that person is doing consumption work. The person who helps buy the new car for the house, the person who helps buy a new home for the family, the person who realizes that this dish soap might not be working very well and we need to get another kind of dish soap. That would be the job of consumption work. So in consumption work, you are organizing the buying and the consuming for the family. That is also disproportionately done by women, but some of the more high-end money purchases, things like buying houses or buying cars, often disproportionately involve men, but the day-to-day things like grocery store, going to the grocery store, buying your children's school clothes, those tend to be done by women. So women tend to spend more time on that, but men tend to be involved in the bigger purchases, which are a little less common. The next one to think about is care work. Who's caring for sick people, making sure their chicken soup is cooked and brought to them? Who's caring for infants and children who can't care for themselves? Who's caring for your elderly relatives? Again, that care work is disproportionately done by women, although we have seen a trend with more men engaging in childcare. And so that is, I would argue, a positive trend, but women are still doing more. Men are just doing more than the last couple generations have when it comes to child care. So care work, again, is caring for elderly family members, sick people, and children, people who can't care for themselves, right? Changing the diapers, potty training the kid, making sure that grandpa and grandma have groceries bought to their house because they shouldn't be out running the streets right now with this global pandemic that we have going on. The next one is kin work. Keeping up with family. That's what kin work is. It's organizing the family Christmas party. It's making sure that, your grandma's okay and checking in and calling her and sending a card to let her know that you're happy she healed from her surgery. Kin work is maintaining those ties, maintaining that connection, calling and checking on people, writing people, emailing people, in this era now, Zooming people, or doing Google Meets or whatever program you're doing to check in with people. Again, that work is overwhelmingly done by women as well. So what we see is it's an unpaid job, right? Nobody's thinking about that as work, but in reality, there is work to be done in keeping your family together. The last one on here is organization or management work. So I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to tilt my phone a bit. Oh, no, you can't see it. Sorry. Somewhere over on that refrigerator, I have a list on the far side. That's my list of all of the grocery items that need to be bought for our family. I sometimes have a list of who needs to be where and when. That calendar of trying to figure out who needs to be where at what time. That's organization work. That's family management work. You don't get paid for that, but somebody needs to do it. Somebody needs to know where everybody needs to be. Somebody needs to know when the last time your kid washed the sheets was, because Lord knows if someone didn't keep a track of that, it may never happen, right? And so that calendar that I have, it's actually way over on the corner. Can't see it amongst all my pictures. That's an example of organization and management work. Nowadays, a lot of it, frankly, is done electronically, sending a text to remind people. For example, tomorrow we have a doctor's appointment for my son. I bet their dad doesn't have a clue about that. But I do, because part of my work in this family is to maintain and organize our events and our activities. So what's the term that feminists use for all of this unpaid labor? They call it the second shift, because what's happened in the modern times is women are no longer staying at home and doing all of these things while men are out in the labor market. But what women are doing now is they're working their paid labor job, which I'm doing right now, while simultaneously trying to do all of this invisible labor, the kin work, the care work, the housework, the organization and management work, the emotion work, all of those different types, consumption work, all of those different types of work that has to be done for the family to maintain. And one of the problems that all of this has created, when you have these dual income households and you have small children and you have a lot of pressure to have your kids in school and have your kids in activities, it's also led to this phenomenon called speed up. Speed up occurs when the family is spending more and more time doing all of these other things, and they are unable to spend as much time sort of with each other. So families are spending more and more time doing paid labor. They're spending more and more time running to different events or activities, and their ability to connect with each other has kind of been limited by that. I heard someone describe this recently and say maybe this is a good thing about this coronavirus, that it actually has slowed people down enough for them to spend more time with their family. Although I know after this is all done, y'all are going to want to run away from your family for a little bit, because being on top of each other all day is a little bit mind numbing. But we have not put as much effort into that. And so this speed up problem is a real problem we have to deal with, on top of the fact that we still all have that unpaid labor and we have these paid labor jobs, and all these things need to get done. And how can we do that in the context of family? And that's what many families are struggling with nowadays.